Miami made a statement Sunday, clean, efficient, and a little ugly for the Falcons. The scoreboard read 34-10, and Tua Tagovailoa did most of the heavy lifting. 20 of 26, 205 yards, and 4 touchdown passes. That wasn't a fluke. It was a clinic for a team that desperately needed one. NFL.com start with the quarterback swap drama that framed the whole afternoon. Atlanta was already thin at QB because Michael Penix Jr. was sidelined with a bone bruise in his left knee, so Kirk Cousins was thrust back into the starting role. Cousins was competent in completion rate, but ineffective in impact plays. 21 of 31 for 173 yards, no touchdowns, no turnovers, and the Falcons never got consistent movement or rhythm on offense. Losing Penix's mobility and timing mattered. Cousins simply couldn't create enough explosive moments to keep Miami honest. Reuters Miami, by contrast, executed a simple formula and stuck to it. Take the high-percentage intermediate shots, mix in a physical running game, and force Atlanta into long, clock-eating drives that never came. Tua's 4 TDs were spread around to different targets, and the Dolphins rolled up a clear advantage in field position and first-half dominance. They outgained Atlanta by a massive margin early and built a 17-3 lead at halftime, then kept adding until the game was well out of reach. That kind of control kills the hope banks. It saps opponents' confidence. Reuters, what was striking was how unemotional and almost clinical Miami looked while doing it. Jalen Waddle popped for 99 yards and gave the offense a vertical threat that kept Atlanta's safeties from cheating everything up into the box. Devon Chain and the Dolphins runners helped chew clock and reset the Falcons' defense, so when Tua targeted the intermediate windows, pocket save-tight passes where he's most comfortable, they hit them repeatedly. When a team plays the percentages that well for a full game, the opponent looks like it's trying to catch up in a book that's already closed. Reuters on Atlanta's side, the issues are both schematic and personnel. Without Penix and without top receiver Drake London also out, the offense became predictable. Third down conversions were anemic, 2 for 11 on the day, and the running game never established enough threat to open up play action. Cousins didn't help by failing to stretch the defense consistently. The offense didn't create any quick strike answers, and that allowed the Dolphins to load the box when necessary and still have success defending the pass. The Falcons' offensive line didn't help either. Pocket pressure and lack of separation compounded into a snowball effect that the coaching staff needs to stop. Laredo Morning Times, this win matters for Miami in more ways than one. It ends a 3-game skid and gives Mike McDaniel and his staff breathing room. It's also a narrative reset for Tua after a messy stretch that included turnovers and public questions about the offense's direction. Ask any coach. 2 things you can't buy are a healthy WR and a QB who can throw efficient intermediate routes. Miami got both Sunday, and it looked like a team that remembered, for a day, how to finish drives and flip field position into points. The Finsider now the deeper read, is this a 1-week pop or sustainable improvement? The Dolphins showed fundamentals, protection, timing, play selection, that you want to see if you're building a second-half push. But skepticism is warranted. Tagovailoa's decision-making will still be tested against better defensive fronts. The Falcons' pass rush is far from elite. The real test comes next week against the Ravens, a defense with elite edge play and scheme versatility. How Miami handles that matchup will be telling about whether Sunday was a reset or a brief respite. The Finsider for Atlanta, the losses pile up into a pattern that demands answers before the season slips further. Penix's availability is obviously part of the worry, but the problems run deeper. Play calling on third down, the ability to roster enough receivers who can separate consistently, and an offensive identity that can adjust when the primary plan is neutralized. You don't win in this league by praying your rookie QB will be perfect. You win by building a supporting cast and scheme that can mask the rookie's rough edges until he grows. Right now, that scaffolding looks shaky. AtlantaFalcons.com. There's also a psychological element. A club that gets steamrolled like this at home, turning a potentially winnable tilt into a blowout, has to battle locker room morale. Atlanta's players will point to turnover luck, injuries, or a missed call, but the truth is quieter and harder to fix. Miami executed basic plays better and sustained its advantage. When that happens, blame isn't as useful as accountability. The Falcons staff needs to stabilize short yardage situations and create better third down scripts, and the front office needs to ensure the QB carousel isn't their long-term plan. The Falcoholic. Last practical takeaway. Coaching flexibility is priceless. McDaniel stuck with the intermediate reads and let his RBs run when space opened. That balance, a little dink, a little power, and smart situational decisions is what wins the middle months in the NFL. Conversely, Atlanta's in-game answers were too little, too late. Even a competent veteran like Cousins needs a structure that plays to his strengths: rhythm throws, manageable third downs, and a running game that resets the down and distance. Sunday, that structure never arrived. MiamiDolphins.com. If you're a neutral fan, Sunday was a reminder of how quickly narratives pivot in the NFL. One week, you're questioning an offense. The next week, you're writing a headline about a quarterback finding his groove. For Miami, the key now is follow-through. For Atlanta, the task is simpler but harder in practice. Fix the essentials: protection, spacing, and third down efficiency before the calendar lowers the margin for error. Otherwise, this 34-10 loss will settle in as the kind of defining midseason setback that's a pain to climb out of. Immediate hook. You think a 1-6 team is finished? Tell that to Tua, who just uncorked 4 touchdown passes while playing through a swollen eye and handed the Falcons a 34-10 reality check. AP News, listen, this wasn't a fluke. Miami looked like a complete football team today. Crisp throws, a running game that moved the chains, and a defense that turned the Falcons' offense into an afterthought. Tua sliced Atlanta up, finishing with 4 TDs and 0 interceptions in a performance that felt, for the moment, like the Tua we all expected back in 2023. The scoreline was decisive, 34-10 Dolphins. AP News, let me be blunt. The narrative surrounding Miami this season has been broken. More headlines about locker room noise than about clean football. Today erased a lot of that noise. Tua was added to the injury illness report with an eye issue, yet he put on a clinic showing the kind of pocket calm and timing you can only earn through years of playoff-level reps. That swollen eye, he strapped on a visor and delivered nonetheless. It's a mental edge. You don't play through weird stuff like that unless you're built to. ESPN.com. Now let's talk matchups. The Falcons were already limping into this one without Michael Penix Jr., who was scratched with a bone bruise in his knee, so veteran Kirk Cousins got the start. That storyline mattered. If Penix plays, you're looking at a different game plan. But he didn't, and Atlanta never really found an answer. Cousins had a rough afternoon. The Falcons' offense never sustained drives, and Miami controlled the clock and the field position. The loss cost Atlanta precious momentum and raised questions about depth and durability under center. NFL.com, what stood out on film? Tua's rhythm with his top targets. Route timing, throw placement. Those slants and intermediate reads that beat a defense over and over again.